Welcome to the Production Expert Podcast. I'm Ashea, and in this edition, I'm joined by Todd Urban. As many of you will already know, Todd is the general manager of Softube, and he is also known for his studio work and his YouTube channel, Urban Sound Studio. Today's topic of conversation is going to be revolving around tattoos, ties, and the art of rock and roll science.
This podcast is sponsored by Genelec. If you've ever been disappointed with the way your mixes sound on other playback systems, then check out Genelec's Unio monitoring ecosystem. By providing a seamless bridge between loudspeaker and headphone monitoring, Unio allows you to quickly create great-sounding mixes that translate consistently wherever you choose to work. No more guesswork, no more surprises. Just truthful, accurate audio monitoring from stereo to immersive. To find out more, visit genelec.com/unio, spelled UNIO. Your mixes will thank you for it.
Todd, thank you for coming on the podcast and welcome.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So before we get into the main podcast, can you tell our listeners a bit about yourself and your career so far?
My career so far, I've been all over the place. I've been working in audio for 30-something years. I started out performing when I was younger, got into sound, and because we didn't have the resources to hire somebody to do sound, so it was kind of scrapping together whatever PA system we could, and somehow that turned into, hey, can you record a band? And we didn't have anything to record with, so it was, recording on a Tascam Porta Studio. And then as the story goes on, it was just building over time, working any job I could, acquiring gear, learning as much as I could. I like to collect degrees, so I've gone to school numerous times, whether Brilliant. It's for orchestral arranging or music education or jazz performance or music management, or most recently I did a production master's over at Berkeley, which was super fun.
Excellent.
So yeah, I've been all over the place, but then put all that together, one of the big things I do beyond just running my own studio and having my Urban Sound Studio YouTube page that a lot of people know me for is I work with Softube, and I work with them as a general manager to basically do a lot of things. I'm all over the place with them, but I've been with them for about 10 years.
And so when you say all over the place, can you describe kind of what you do?
Yeah, and when I say all over the place, it really is. I was brought on originally to work with them as a product educator. So I would learn the product. We would take a look at who's using that product, and most of the time it was plugins in the early days. Mm-hmm. And it was kind of, how do we show people how to understand what's going on with this product, the intention of the product, mm-hmm. what it's supposed to be used for, and then how do we apply it to someone's session to make their workflow better or make their project sound better. Mm-hmm. But that evolved over time as I got to know the people in Sweden working with Softube. And it was a little bit more on the side of things such as product development, some product management, product marketing. And especially now that Softube has several hardware pieces out now,
Yes.
Now it's working with the team to assess the design of the hardware or work with customers to figure out what the customer needs are.
Right. See, that sounds really fun, and it definitely sounds all over the place. So it must keep you on your toes.
It is all over the place, and it is fun. It's the thing I like about it is I get to work on the music side. I get to work on the side of the great scientists that we have working in Sweden, where I interact with them and see how the product gets built from the ground up. And then I get to work with the end users, doing some research with the users and learning about how they work and how we can improve products to make their workflow better.
And do you find that you prefer that? So it's a bit of everything, and it's more exciting for you?
Absolutely, yes. I mean, I can't, even in my own personal music making, I will be playing in an Irish prog rock group one day, doing a mini tour, then go to a wedding band where we're doing top 40 covers, and then I'll be doing a classical session.
Love it.
I'm recording Mahler or something like that. So it's all over the place.
So that's kind of part of your personality as well, then. I assume.
It is. I drink too much coffee. I'm an anxious person, and I need to get rid of the energy. Yeah.
Yay, well done. And so is it you that maybe that describes I think I've seen on your YouTube channel or your Instagram, is it you with the tattoos?
I do have some tattoos, yes.
See, that's funny because you look very, and I want to talk about the rock and roll scientist tagline of Softube, because that's a really interesting philosophy. But in terms of your sort of aesthetic, I don't know whether it's deliberate or whether it's just a way of, just a natural way of being. But I like the tattoos combined with the suit and the glasses. I think it kind of encompasses kind of what we're talking about with the Softube philosophy.
I guess I'm still trying to find myself. I don't know. I recently have started wearing a lot of ties. I wear a tie almost every day. And there are a few reasons for it. The funny thing is I've had my clients come in and say, "Who do you think you are, Ash Schmidt? Like, take the tie off." And some of them have actually started showing up to sessions wearing ties themselves just to kind of mock it. I used to, this is kind of a weird side thing, but I used to run a hair salon. And
oh, wow.
I noticed back in the early days, two things. When you dress a little more formally, you're the person in charge.
Okay.
And I mean, people just gravitate toward you. If they've never met you before, they just see the person in the suit. And it's like, oh, maybe I talked to that person.
Yeah.
The other thing is money, when I'm exchanging money or working with clients, never becomes as much of a question. It's like, okay, here's the person in the suit. They're obviously showing a certain sign of respect. So that's the reason for the tie. But yeah, I'm wearing a t-shirt now. You can't see me. So all the tattoos are out.
No, but that's so fascinating because I've never seen a producer in a suit and tie before.
Not much these days, no.
But that's cool. I like that. That's really interesting. So what is the philosophy behind the tagline then? Should we get into that? The rock and roll scientists. Yeah. I mean, I get it. I totally get it, but I'd love to just sort of take it apart.
I should know who it was that coined that term, or I believe it was a magazine review or an early article where someone used that phrase. I should know who it is. But the idea comes from the fact that we are kind of rock and rollers. Even the jazzers at Softube are still edgy, right? We like everything. We've got a little edge to ourselves. We don't want to see this company just be generic or I guess that's basically a good term. We want it to have a little edge. We want to challenge each other, and it's great. From the CEO to the developer to the marketing team to the support team, we all interact. We all push each other. We all challenge each other. And so the rock and roll side is more than literal rock and roll. It's also the attitude.
Yeah.
But then the scientist side is probably pretty obvious. We're known for analog modeling.
Yeah.
And it's meticulously done. So it's really kind of emerging in these two worlds, and it works. It really feels like the right place for me.
Yeah. And I think that's really important what you touched on about challenging each other, because, we get a lot of echo chambers, particularly in the world of algorithms and stuff. So I do think a good team, part of it is to challenge each other's ideas. So how do you do that?
I think it's not a formal, here's the routine to do this. I mean, we do have some formal, we're going to evaluate this product and here's the way we're going to go about methodically taking a look at the product. We do have that in place, but I think it's more of a culture. It's this idea of, hey, we're in this growing together, and while there is some fragmentation between within the company in terms of departments, right? We have some management, we have support, we have developers. The idea is that the doors are open, that we talk to each other, we jump on Slack and we shoot each other questions, and we're pretty blunt about it too. We don't really hold back. And I think that's great because there's never a question of, well, what were they trying to say? It's more kind of like, oh, they didn't like this. Let's, come together and figure out what it is about this new product that isn't working for them. And let's kind of tear it down, see if there's room for improvement. And I love that about the company.
I think that's great because you get to the crux of the issue immediately.
Absolutely.
The Production Expert Podcast is made possible using the new Source Nexus suite from Source Elements, the professional way to collaborate over the internet, along with high-definition, low-latency audio and video. Need to record an interview or a podcast, or collaborate with others for songwriting, review and approval, remote editing, and more. With Source Nexus Suite, using any browser, you'll get studio-quality audio and video, along with custom-built tools for seamless integration with your DAW. Pricing starts at free. Get your account today at sourceelements.com.
I've been looking at the timeline on your website, and obviously I want to get into Flow Studio because that's really important. But it says in 2014, Softube releases Console 1, redefining mixing in the box. And I do think that's absolutely what you're doing at the moment with Flow Studio. Could you talk a bit about that and why it's so sort of integral to Softube to redefine mixing?
Yeah, I'll back up to the original Console 1 for a quick sec. The idea in today's world doesn't seem that big of an idea, but it was, let's give one-to-one control over a channel strip on a controlled surface so that someone can mix using their hands and their ears and not so much make judgments with their eyes. And it took me a long time to buy into that because at the time when it was released, I was still a customer. I was a Softube customer.
Right. Okay.
And I looked at it and I said, I could MIDI map something and control a plugin. This doesn't do it for me. And I didn't give it the time of day. I just passed it over until someone gave me one and I tried it and I said, wait, this is a game changer when the work is done for you. So that turns into speed, right?
Yes.
You're not wasting time setting things up. But also the layout is laid out in a way that makes sense. So and we get this way of learning to mix like we did on an analog console, so that I hear this issue, I'm going to reach out for that frequency or that bandwidth and tweak it until it's in the right spot. That changes the way our mixes sound. Mm-hmm. And of course, the processing sounded great. So fast forward more than 10 years, Flow Studio, as you mentioned, is kind of the next evolution of this. I mean, we've developed Console 1 over the years, but Flow Studio takes a different approach. The original concept we came up with when we were designing the product was take your mixes from 0 to 80%. And that kind of sounds strange. Like, don't you want to say 100%? No, that's not the promise here. The promise is we're trying to facilitate flow state, the idea that I'm in the groove. I've got my guitar in my hand, or I'm singing, or I'm just, whatever it is. A few of us are in the room together. I know I need to get ideas tracked as quickly as possible so I don't lose that creative momentum. Mm-hmm. And the last thing I need to do is start loading plugins and tweaking plugins. This was about Flow Studio, or even back in the day, Flow Mixing Suite, which it started off as software, allows you to just load a concept or a flow. So let's say I'm tracking vocals, rock vocals, right? Even more specifically, male rock vocals. Yeah. It's going to set me up with a template that's going to identify some frequencies and some saturation that works with my voice. And I just turn one knob until it gets into the right spot. And I just start tracking. It sounds great through my headphones. When I play it back, it sounds amazing. But it's all tracking dry, right? So we could go back in later and tweak, and we could either keep all that or not. But what it's really doing is making everything speed up for us so we don't lose that creative workflow.
Yeah, and it's also giving you that sort of broad brushstroke kind of bigger picture thing where you can, again, like you said, stay in the creative flow, which we talk about so much on the podcast. And obviously that's the thing. I think most creatives or everyone doing music wants to be in that flow because that's the best place for ideas. And I think we're moving towards a more intuitive culture. Whether that was the idea from the beginning, I don't know. But certainly it seems to be trying to move as seamlessly from our heads onto our DAWs. Without too much in between stuff. And I think you've done that really well with Flow Studio.
Yeah, thanks. And What's interesting is to talk to users of Flow Studio after they've had some time with it, because we had our idea of how the product is going to be best for the market. But the users ultimately decide how a product gets positioned within the market. And so as I talk to people, I have certain musicians or producers telling me, hey, I use it exactly like you're thinking. I just get the guitar out, I get an idea, I load up a guitar sound, I just plug directly into my interface, and all of a sudden I've got this great crunchy guitar. It sounds great. I jump over to vocals, sounds great. I get my friend on drums, just put a single drum overhead just because we're laying down ideas. It's not maybe the final thing. And it's exactly what we thought. But then I talk to people who are working on a different level, who are like, yeah, I really don't need to do that because I'm not doing any tracking. For me, this sits on my master bus. It's my mastering chain.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Or in the case of me, it's my aux bus controller for my effects, because I can load all these effects in one shot so quickly and control them with one knob, or there's a total of 5 knobs on there, but it's one main knob that we call the Omni knob, and then these other 4 knobs to be able to dive a little deeper. And it's interesting that everybody really finds their own use case for Flow Studio.
And it's really important to say that these are all highly customizable and tweakable, like you say, because I think a lot of people, when they hear one knob, they kind of go, oh no, well that's not proper, proper mixing or proper practice. But the fact is that it's accessible to everyone, and you can have various different options. You've got the options to really tweak all the sort of minor details as well, which is great.
Mm-hmm. Well, if we go, that's a great point. There are a total of 5 knobs. The one knob is really just meant to be your macro control, to control them all together and kind of elevate the mix. But what's interesting is, as I met with users when this product was being developed, I would say to them, can you show me the chain of plugins you're using in a session? And they would share their screen and show me what they're using. And I would look a lot of the times, and a lot of users were just putting something like a reverb plugin or a delay plugin on an aux track in the default state. Right. Actually, I would say probably 90% of the people I spoke to just put a plugin on and don't ever touch it. So before they say, hey, one knob control seems very limited, well, yeah, but you're not even touching your plugins. You're claiming you want all this control. The reality is, a lot of us are more focused on workflow and speed and getting to the next part of the song than they are every intricate detail.
Yeah.
And so what I found now that the product's been out for a while is people are diving into their products a little bit more. They are customizing these macro controls to get more control. And I think, I'm not positive, but I think they're listening more closely, hence getting better results.
This podcast is sponsored by Genelec. If you've ever been disappointed with the way your mixes sound on other playback systems, then check out Genelec's Unio monitoring ecosystem. By providing a seamless bridge between loudspeaker and headphone monitoring, Unio allows you to quickly create great-sounding mixes that translate consistently wherever you choose to work. No more guesswork, no more surprises. Just truthful, accurate audio monitoring from stereo to immersive. To find out more, visit genelec.com/Unio, spelled UNIO. Your mixes will thank you for it.
That's interesting. Yeah. And so you actually, personally, you work with a hybrid workflow, right? What were your decisions for doing that?
I wanted to spend as much money as I can and buy as much. It's yeah. I mean, I do work with a hybrid. I use a lot of hardware. I use analog summing. I have a massive patch bay with a ton of stuff that I'm always connecting. Outboard preamps. The reality is, I get this. I teach at a university, and the students ask me, "What would you do if you lost everything, or if your studio burned down?" And I don't know. I might just have an interface and something like my control surfaces if I had to start from scratch. But over the years, I built up all this gear. And for me, I find it inspiring. I could get 99% of the same sounds if I want to stay within the box. I really can. But for me, there's something creative about committing sounds. There's something creative about the artist is with you in the room and they're just not getting what they want. So we say, hey, let's just unplug everything. Let's take this box over here. Let's just commit a sound and see if it changes things. And I would say, more than half the time, just by changing the setup and giving them something fresh to work with, we start moving in a direction that ends up being where we want to go.
Yeah. And that's a really good point about sort of committing and decision fatigue as well, because we talk about with a lot of people about decision fatigue and the fact that in the box we have so many options as opposed to, with traditional hardware, there weren't so many options, which made people perhaps commit more easily. But then there's the other side. And I wonder what you think about this. I was talking with Gregor Bailey from Fender Studio. I don't know if you know him.
Of course. Yeah, Gregor's great.
Yeah, he's fantastic. But he was actually saying that he doesn't want to be forced to commit to ideas. He likes the idea of having all the options in the world and being able to decide when he wants to commit to an idea. And so it's just really interesting to see the different sort of approaches. And in terms of your clients, what is it? Does it tend to help when they're given sort of limited options or less options?
It can. I tend to be more conservative when I'm tracking. So I might have some saturation. I'll definitely have a little bit of compression or EQ if I know at the moment that it's appropriate for what I'm trying to capture for the intention of the song. So as an example, I might listen to a guitar part and we're about to track guitar, and rather than say, hey, let's go in later and figure out exactly what that guitar sounds like, well, we kind of know exactly where that guitar needs to sit in the mix. We know it needs to, let's say, be at occupying 4K, right? Mm-hmm. So I might, in solo, that guitar might not sound like what we think is the best sounding guitar, but we know the intention of that guitar part for that song. Let's EQ it now. I know that's not going to change. So that's where I set it up on my analog gear, track it in the box. When it comes to mixing, though, I am primarily on Console 1, and I'm using Flow Studio a lot on buses to help glue things together, or using it as my aux bus effect chains. I do still print through analog gear, but I'm not doing the majority of my EQing and compression through analog gear like we did in the old days. I'm kind of using it more as like a little bit of bus coloration as I'm printing my stems.
Interesting.
So the analog gear's there. The mix is really more in the box on Console 1, but I'm summing through a console. I'm using some outboard gear when I'm printing stems, and it does do something for me. Can it be done in the box? As I said, yeah, probably a lot of the times, but there's something about closing your eyes, having a familiar piece of gear, an analog gear piece that you like, knowing exactly where your hand has to go and how to get that sound. That's something that still, to me feels creative.
See, that's so... I'm going to have to break that apart because it's such an interesting topic. And when you said about that, the intention of the guitar part, which I agree with that aspect, because certainly a guitar part tends to be cued a certain way and sounds a certain way. And we know how guitars are supposed to sound. Whereas, perhaps I think a lot of modern, I don't want to say modern as a catch-all term, but a lot of beat makers or perhaps R&B producers, hip hop producers, we or they don't know exactly what the intention of the sound that we want to create is, because maybe we're using a synth part or a sample and we want to put a crazy effect over it. And I do think from what you've told me with Flow Studio, you can actually use that to our advantage there in a way, just sort of like playing around and seeing what inspires you to come up with new ideas. So it's funny what you say about intentions and kind of how the brain works with, I want this sound to be like this because I can picture this guitar, whereas with certain sounds, we don't actually know what we want it to sound like, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I have a video. Here's a little self-promotion. I have a video on my channel. It's a mixed production breakdown.
Yeah.
But I don't know how many people have watched it, but the thing I think is interesting about that video is I know from people writing to me and saying, hey, what plugins do you use? How do you process this? How do you mix your guitars this way? That's the questions they ask. The video that I made talks about it from a very different angle, which is the pre-production stage. Before I start recording, I have a document that really lays out everything in the song. Like, here's the lyrics, here's the intention of that lyric, here's how that vocalist is going to sing it. And I work with the artist on this. And so by the time we start to track guitars, we've already torn apart, hey, what is really the emotional objective of this song and how are we going to achieve it? So the guitar player walks in, whether it's the artist or a separate guitar player, and it's like, hey, when we get to this chorus, we're going for this type of emotion. We're trying to elevate it, or we're trying to get a lot of stereo width, or we're getting a lot of crunch, or we're trying to make it obnoxious in your face and almost too loud so it gets your attention so this new section really becomes obvious. But I didn't work this way my entire life. It took many years of mixing for way too long to realize that the legwork that has to go into your production before you start tracking
Definitely
is actually more important than the mix stage many of the times. Because if the performance is terrible, the mix is never going to fix that.
Absolutely. And I think for tracking engineers, recording engineers that don't mix, I do think learning how to mix is extremely beneficial, because you do know what that finished product, what it takes to get that finished product, and what raw material you actually need from the performance in order to get that product. And like you say, if you want sort of this part, the guitar part or the vocals, and to give them, I don't know, backing vocals, and we want them really wide and everything, you know exactly the placement to have the vocalist on the mic, you know what kind of preamp settings to add. So obviously mixing and the idea of the finished product, having it there and knowing how to get there and what you need is really important. And it's a really good point that you make there, definitely.
Absolutely. And tying back to where you started with this question, Flow Studio does achieve this. It does it in a different way than we would traditionally do it. An example would be, hey, we're coming up to this drum. It could be, let's say, a section where we want the drums to get lo-fi. One of the presets on there is called 9-inch drums. So you could probably picture what that sounds like. That might be the perfect time that on the drum overhead, we say, hey, before we track this, let's just monitor through this so that the drummer can hear, hey, on playback, this is what this is going to sound like. It's going to influence the way they play.
Yes.
If you do it in reverse, where we say, hey, let's just track all the drums and we'll get our great sounds later, that never works because the performance wasn't there from the beginning. So that's where, for me, Flow Studio really shines, is we're giving the artist an ability to hear, to react to the sounds, to do things that we couldn't set up with individual plugins in the same way. It would take forever and we wouldn't be able to manipulate it properly. And another great thing about Flow Studio is it's super low latency. So it's, a lot of individual plugins wouldn't be able to achieve that on its own either. So
that's excellent. And I love how portable it is as well.
Yeah, it's cute, right? Throw it in the backpack.
Exactly.
And it's got a nice shiny screen with bling on it. So.
Oh my goodness, we love a bit of shiny bling as well.
That's right.
That's brilliant. So you are actually also, among many, many things, you're an educator, right?
I do educate. I profess to people. I tell them, yeah.
Well, that's all we have time for, but thanks again to Todd, who will be back for the next edition of the Production Expert podcast.